I see we have a number of folks who are already in our community and some new watchers. Great to have everyone. All right, I'm going to let people continue to trickle in, but I'm going to, get to going, considering we only have 45 minutes with Ilana and Porter, which is great. So, hi, I'm Sophie from Project FoundED. If you don't know what Project FoundED is, we're a community of EdTech founders. We really believe technology's role is to deliver equitable learning outcomes for all learners, and we support founders in the delivery of that goal. So I put a link in the chat, join us at projectfounded.org, where, we've built up a summer series, and we're super excited to have Leone Consulting Group with us for 2 events on the marketing side, marketing and brand engagement side. So today's event is going to be on social media. Towards the end of this, I'll also pop a link for our event next month, where they will be talking about community building. So super happy to have both of you, and I'll pass it on now for y'all to introduce yourselves and get this going.
Awesome. I think my friend Porter is going to start driving and share her screen so you can see some.
Yes. Sophie, will you enable me to share my screen, please?
You can see some pretty visuals as we talk about ourselves, and hopefully we get to learn a lot from each other. Really excited about this community too. When Sandra was talking about it forming, it just was something that was desperately needed in our community. I see a lack of it on social media in particular. So here we are, we're about to demystify social media. It might be a big ask, but we are going to get started. We will also be using the chat too to answer some questions. But first things first, let's get to know each other. My name is Ilana. I feel really blessed to be here. I lead a team from Leone Consulting Group. It's been about 5 years, and my team is a small but mighty team. Most of them, except myself, have all been educators in a previous life. So they've been boots on the ground. They understand what it's like to be a teacher, an administrator, someone representing a school board, parents. There's all these stakeholders that come into education, and we want to not only just represent education brands, but know that we've been in their shoes. So I lead this beautiful team. Previous life was the director of social media and marketing at Edutopia, known as the George Lucas Educational Foundation. And that was just an amazing experience where I got to see the beauty of educators. And people told me that people would never use Facebook to professionally collaborate and share with each other. And I said, that's wrong, because I know educators and I know they're so selfless and they're so passionate. And guess what? We created a community of millions and millions of educators, not only on Facebook, but on Twitter. And at the time there was a little bit on Pinterest as well, and a hint on Instagram. So there are these beautiful community of educators and parents and administrators, and I got to be in the crux of it. So that passion led me to create my own team. I also am actively involved in higher education and criminal justice. I'm a board member of Mount Tamalpais College, and I do lots of things for EdTech startups because I believe you all have the passion to make a difference in the ecosystem. So I'm gonna kick it over to my friend Porter.
Hi, y'all. My name's Porter Palmer, and yes, my title really is Director of Joy. I am obsessed with joy. I'm also obsessed with community science, so I will be leading the next session that we do together, and Ilana will be supporting me. And in this session, she takes most of the lead, and I support her around things around engagement. So my background is I was a special education teacher in South Carolina. I worked with both adults and children with disabilities for more than a decade. That remains a great passion for me, being an advocate for people with disabilities. I have had the great pleasure of working alongside Ilana for 3 years now. Prior to that, I was the Director of Learning Communities at Discovery Communications in the Discovery Educator Network, which is one of the largest, most active communities of educators worldwide. And I am a former educator, I told you, but a lifelong learner. So I love learning about social media and have always been sort of an early adopter of social media and making connections with folks. I am a full-time wanderer. I am coming to you from my motor home that I live in full-time with my husband. We've been traveling for about a decade. And my favorite flavor of ice cream is Probably vanilla. Ilana, you didn't say your favorite flavor of ice cream.
I didn't, and we didn't tell our group to, but part of what we want to do is introduce the feeling of community to this growing group of awesome people. So it sounds silly in terms of favorite ice cream, but it really helps us get to know each other in more personal ways. And Porter tells a story as we were building a community of educators once, and the teacher said, you know, not one person has ever even thought to ask me my favorite flavor of ice cream. And I know it sounds silly and small, but it just shows that you care about people as human beings and connect to them. So feel free to add that if you'd like to. I actually don't like ice cream.
So hi guys, make sure you introduce yourselves to each other in the chat. It's wonderful. I'm very happy to read that Amy will soon live in Charleston, South Carolina. I was born there. That is where this accent comes from, is South Carolina. But it is less important for y'all to know about me and more important for you to know about each other. That's what community is all about. Find somebody today to connect with and build a relationship with. Now I'll move on to our rules for today. So here's how we hope that you will make the most of this. And I will define this as be present. All of the words on here, if I could offer you any advice right now, is try your best to turn off your Slack. I have my notifications off for the next hour. My phone, there was a recent phone call, I am ignoring it. Be present. I'm so happy to spend this time with you, and I hope that you will enjoy this time together.
Yeah, and contributing to what we call the back channel in the chat is encouraged. It's not rude. So you guys can learn with each other just as much as you can learn from us too. And like you said, maybe you can make a goal to find somebody sharing good stuff on that back channel, connect with them.
Make sure when you're in that back channel, you select, I think the option is to all panelists and attendees so that we all see it. If you're sending to host, then only Sophie's seeing it and we're not. So make sure you've selected all panelists and attendees. And with that, I will present to you the iceberg that is social media marketing. And y'all, we are releasing, and you'll have this at the end, but our Twitter account will be releasing a blog post tomorrow about this iceberg. So if you want even more detail about it, you can follow us on Twitter, and poof, you'll get a link to it tomorrow. That's the easiest way to deliver it to you. So the thing most people see related to social media is the clever post that goes viral, or for your brand, sometimes you'll see the one that just sunk. But let's talk about, what went viral. And while that's something that's worth getting excited about, y'all, the field of social media is much more complex. Posting really is just the tip of the iceberg. So I'll ask you this question. It's sort of rhetorical, but have you ever heard content is king? That's been around a long time. People will say content is king, and then other people will say, well, maybe it's not, maybe it's engagement, but I'm going to say content is still king. In social media, finding or creating the right content makes all the difference. But even that isn't everything. So look at all of this stuff that's below the water level. So in social media, finding or creating the right content does make all the difference, but it isn't everything. What content does your audience and potential audience want? And how do you know that? So that requires listening and using analytics to constantly improve your strategy and your tactics. And while content may be king on social media, engagement is the keys to the kingdom. So on social media, engagement. So you see things on here around engagement, but that fuels the algorithms, it builds trust, and it leads to both awareness and loyalty. So there is so much that lies beneath the surface. And I'll ask you to use the chat, and I'll give you about 15 seconds. So be quick. What do you see here that you didn't expect to see down below? Or what do you think is missing? And I actually have one that's missing that I'll tell you about, but what did you not expect that's here below posting? And what do you see is missing?
And one thing I'll add, Porter, is like once you become a socially driven, a social media driven organization or informed organization, and same with community, once community becomes a backbone of who you are and operate as an organization, same with social media, it's important that you don't silo it and you bring up and train other people, because just as future experience, most people don't know much about what you're doing. And there's an opportunity to, there's always a tendency to silo, but then what happens is your team, if you're lucky enough to have a social team or a community team, you're thrown into every single meeting everywhere. So it's really important as you become community minded, social media minded, that you bring your entire organization up and coach them.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the one thing that's on, and there are a lot of things that are below the sea level. But one thing that I think is missing from here, and I like to hold this one back, is crisis control or crisis planning. That is actually a thing you need to think about before it happens.
Yeah, like maybe your brand was accused of something. It could be data policy related. I've seen that. I've seen sometimes brands hire people and those people don't represent the organization in great ways. How do you deal with bad press, bad events, bad scenarios? Does your team equipped? I mean, I learned from some of the best, like even like Red Cross social media. What do they do in actual crisis? So you have to plan. In the world of education, I've had scenarios where students have thought about taking their lives and reached out to us. What do you do then? You shouldn't be thinking about it at that moment. You should have had a plan in place.
I love that Amanda says that she wasn't really expecting to see training teams and staff, but a lot of times, just to be honest, sometimes your employees on social media can be the ones on their own personal accounts who step in it. You know what I'm saying, y'all? So providing training for folks about like how they represent your brand, even in their own personal, and you choose that level, but that's sort of what we're getting at it around training teams, staff, including somebody said something about the executive coaching, like teaching the people who are founders like you guys about how you can make the most out of your social media. So there is a lot beneath.
That is like my most favorite thing to do, by the way, is because you all are megaphones of your own brand too. And you don't want to be just talking about your brand, but I want you to be human beings and connect to people in authentic ways and share the passion. You all started companies with the passion and the why, but sometimes you get on social media and you become an infomercial. You're way better of a human being than that. So I coach a lot of executives on how to connect authentically.
Speaking of executives, Ilana, this is a thing that y'all certainly will want to know about.
Yeah, so as your company grows, your level of investment will grow appropriately. Small companies, we typically see, if you're a startup or, maybe Series A, B, sometimes C, we'll see 1 to 2 people. Mid-sized companies, we'll see more. Enterprise companies, even more so, right? It gets more complex. You get more tools, you get more workflows, you get more departments. All those people cost money. Generally, what you're going to see from a small level of effort, if you have 1 person and you need somebody mid-level, kind of manager level, it's going to be at least with benefits anywhere from 85 to 100K. 3s can start at 200K depending on the level of expertise and the way you've decided to structure your department. But all of those things Porter showed you in the iceberg, you'll start to be able to group them and you'll be like, oh, there's a lot of data oriented things. That's an analytics position. Oh, there's people talking to people. There's a community management position. And I would say that's the first thing I did is I split my team at Edutopia into people that are great at copy and programming and creating content. And that's the posting the iceberg up top, but they did a lot more than that, with people that were really good at conflict resolution, supporting, building community. And those are different skill sets. So you can see that you eventually want to structure out into these different roles. So when we think about social media, we talked about everything we do from like manager perspective if you just had one person, but like, why would you as a brand want to get on social media? What do you think are some benefits? So throw them up in the chat. I want gut reactions. There are no stupid answers, and there are no, like, if somebody already said it, go ahead and put it up there too. But we want to hear from you first. What are your perceived benefits of social media? And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty. So we got some brand awareness, sales, connecting. I like that one. I like some more connecting. Resources, community. Yes, sales, networking and development. Okay, we'll keep going on that and let's actually start revealing some answers. So we have decided to organize because there's so many benefits of social media. I'd like to start at the top of a traditional marketing funnel. And we talk about, I think Sandra was the one who said awareness, right? At its core, social media is 100% designed for brand awareness. It's this big net of people that have no idea who you are. And it's your opportunity to reach, create relationships with them. So you can increase brand recognition. Eventually you will start improving your brand reputation and trust. Depending on the platform, there's some SEO benefits. And the thing I love, and I think people discount it the most, is sharing your story in an authentic way. And sometimes we work with founders that have lost their why. They started it and then it turned into something really big. Let's get you back to your why. It should be driving everything. So the next one, it's a animated slide, so hold out. Yes, there is SEO benefits for someone who put that in there. The consideration part is now you're on someone's awareness. You're starting to become considered a thought leader. You're showing up consistently. You can gather product feedback. You can start hinting out cool things about your product so people start considering you more. This is where people start to generate new sales leads, but then it moves us into the next tier. But you also can start generating referral traffic, which I've seen someone in the chat say. Conversion, when we talk about, it really depends on how you all define conversion. And I do recommend you all look at your Google Analytics and set up goals based on all of the conversions. But you can be anything from increasing in-person attendee events, webinar registrations, email growth, actual brand loyalty, where we're teaching people that are your users how to use your product in a more active way. Maybe you're connecting to people and providing them quicker and better answers on social media. And then loyalty is not what all social media is designed for, and we will get into that, but it can happen in certain channels. It tends to happen more in community-oriented environments. So if we're talking about building a Facebook group, in particular, but this is where you start creating relationships. And this might sound touchy-feely, but it really does fuel everything. I want you to know who the influencers are. I want you to know who are your key users that like to talk about you. I want you to know potential people that you want to get to know. The more you recognize, celebrate, and uplift their voice, that creates relationships. That'll eventually create loyalty. And then last but not least, this is what people sometimes come to me in Porter for around building communities. They say, I want to bring an ambassador program. I want advocacy. I want referrals. I want affiliates. So eventually, as you start building up your audience and getting them more and more active and recognizing them and creating relationships, you can start to get down to this marketing funnel. So there are 10 million benefits of social media. We have a blog post all about this as well. I hope that this organizes it in a nice way, knowing that when you are starting out, you will always start at the top and you will always work your way down, but knowing that the purpose of social media is not to drive traffic 100% to your website. Sometimes it's about brand reputation. Sometimes it's about brand awareness. Sometimes it's just about creating relationships with people. So let's move on.
So as we move on, a thing that I just would like to mention to you guys, in case you were wildly trying to take notes, you can relax, be present. You'll get a copy of this. This is being recorded. So don't feel like you have you can take screen captures all you want, but know that you can absorb this and you don't have to wildly write down every word that was on each slide. You will get these.
Yeah, and the next nerdy step of this, and I do with some clients on that funnel, is then I work with them on the channels they're on and we'll align metrics to each part of the funnel. So if we're in awareness, we're going to be talking about impressions, for example. So know that there is a second step of this, is that generally here are our goals. How do we start connecting the dots to the platforms and the metrics on the platforms?
Okay, so I know that you guys listed a lot of benefits already. And some of you said this, and it's so important to us that we felt like it was worth an entire slide. At the core, social media is a chance to tell your story in a personal way that allows you to connect and provide value to others. And I always want you to hold on to that, no matter what other goals, whatever part of the funnel it is. Social media is about building those relationships and connecting with others. To move down the funnel, though, you do need to engage your audience. And so to do this, you need to be consistently showing up and providing value. And when you increase your engagements, you increase your reach. So engagements lead to reach. And guess what? Reach leads to more engagements. It is like this cycle. So recurring engagement can build trust and your brand reputation, which then can contribute to increased clicks and visits to your website or product. So people are asking, how do you define engagement? So that is any click, if you're on, let's take Twitter, for example, if they click a link, that's an engagement. If they reply, that's an engagement. If they watch a video, that's an engagement. If they hit that little heart button, that's an engagement. On Facebook, there are reactions, comments, sharing, so a retweet. So that's how we define engagement. Thanks for the great question. So since we've defined that, let me just back up and say, so if you have engagements, that means, I'm going to say Twitter, but it can be any of them. Twitter gets this little signal that says, oh, this is popular content. Let me send it to more people. That's how the algorithm works. And then it gets delivered to more people, and then more people interact with it. And then recurring engagement builds that trust, builds your reputation, and then that will eventually lead to greater website usage or visits over time.
Yes, and it's not just about engagement, it's about recency of engagement. So algorithms in particular are not looking for engagement over time. They're looking at, is there signals in this noise to show it's great content, like Porter said, but recency of engagement. So I will challenge you all, once you put out a tweet, once you put out a Facebook post, an Instagram post, anything, I want you to put a comment immediately as a brand, as an employee, and I want you to get a couple people to like it. And I know this sounds like cheating, but it's a way to seed engagement so then you can actually get a chance in the algorithm.
Because social media success is always about engagement. Social media success is not actually about the number of followers, the page likes, or really the comments or likes on a single post. A lot of people think it's about those vanity metrics. People ask us all the time, can you get us more followers? But those are vanity metrics that can mask inactive accounts, such as the number of followers or page likes, or those one-hit wonder posts. I remember one about pizza made out of candy corn or something that went super viral, but it wasn't sticky. Like, people didn't stick around after that post. One tip is never, ever, ever buy followers. It will hurt you in the long run, and you're going to be spending money increasing followers that aren't actually your target audience. There is a question here about focusing on strategies and tactics specific to engaging educators. And I do think in a little bit, we are going to help you think about that more, but each audience is different. I'm giving a little bit of a spoiler, is every audience, even educator audiences, there are differences in what they are interested in.
Yeah, I mean, once we had a client that was all about school scheduling, though that audience, even though it's in education, is very different from an audience that is about video professional development, from another audience that's about complementary curriculum learning to parents. So in the field of education, there's a lot of different stakeholders, as you all know, but we will give you the tools to try to find signals to what your audience really likes. Because every audience is different. We certainly have decades of experience to start with some best practices, but I recommend that you say, what do you like? Let's throw this out. Let's look at the data to be informed as much as possible. So I think really quickly, Porter talked about social media engagement, and someone had the great question about what is engagement. Just know that engagement has evolved from before. It was all very reactionary. It was monitoring notifications in your DMs. It was like, okay, how can I help these people that are specifically reaching out to me? Now to win and play the game and also create relationships is that you have to do so much more in terms of engagement. That's why I created an entire team that focused on this. But for example, you have to follow people. If you're in the field of education, you have to be listening to others. People do not respect you if you're not following anyone, you're not uplifting, and you're not elevating voices. And we will teach you, you need to learn about the topics that are most brand aligned for you. So maybe you're a project-based learning brand. You want to say, okay, there's some great voices that are doing project-based learning. Let's elevate them. Let's follow them. Let's recognize them. So there's a lot of strategic following and unfollowing. As a rule of thumb, for all of our clients, we do at least 50 a week, and we unfollow as many as we can if they've followed lots of people that are not appropriate or they bought followers. We ping people as much as possible. People are getting lazier and lazier on social media, and think about you when you go on social media. The things that you prioritize are your notifications. So how do we get in their feed? We ping them in comments, we tag them, we go, hey, personal DM message, hey, Sandro, can you take a look at this article? I'm super excited about it, want to get your thoughts. Like, it takes that extra effort. Proactive commenting, I already talked about that pro tip. I don't want to see one post from all of you after this that doesn't have engagement that's already seated on it. It shows that you're there and that you're ready to listen too. Topic listening is the cream of the crop. I don't get there with a lot of my clients, but it's something that most big brands do. So if you're Coca-Cola, you're listening to people that are talking about soda, and they have image recognition. So it maybe someone shares a Coca-Cola on a beach. They'll be like, hey, this will go in your feed to respond to, so you can retweet and regram, do all the things when it comes to really elevating the people actually talking about you. But it's another great way to get in conversations about things that you care about as a brand. So if you're into social and emotional learning, I want you to engage in conversations around social and emotional learning that have nothing to do with your brand. That's a whole nother level. Okay, let's jump into more evolution. So that was the evolution of engagement. This is the evolution of the purpose of social media. So to start, everyone thinks that their product is super awesome. Their website's awesome. Why wouldn't someone want to go to their awesome website and hang out? I will challenge you and say your website's not as awesome as social media, because these are billion-dollar companies that their name of their game is to capture as much attention as possible. And generally, they are not designed to send traffic to your website. They do that, but that's not what they want. And you are not the center of the universe. So I call that the hub and spoke. It's really just, hey, social media exists to push traffic to my website. And the way I'm going to define success on social media is how much referral traffic and conversions I get. And by doing that, you won't even understand the benefits of brand awareness, trust, engagement, all the things that are building that funnel to eventually go down. Now, it's all about, how do I provide different and unique experiences? And you'll see that website is just one little blurb, and it's one way to have an experience of the myriad of ways you can have a relationship in somebody's life. So Facebook, I want you to think about, what is the different and unique experience as a brand I can provide on Facebook? What are the tools that are unique to that platform? And what is that algorithm like? So people get in a certain way. If you go and interact with people on LinkedIn versus Instagram, you're gonna wanna give them a unique experience that they're used to. So it's all about, how do I create very purposeful content in a meaningful way that becomes an experience unique to that platform? And I think that we just wanted to hit home, just because of the other slide too, about humanizing your brand. Please, when you go on social media, it's not about you. It never was. I want you to go in and listen as much as possible and try to create relationships, understand who's talking about what, give them the recognition they deserve. I think too many people in education try to reinvent the wheel because they want to show what their stamp is and not really survey what's really going on. And that's what I love about this community, is that you can come together and try to collaborate with each other and build upon each other too. But it's never about you, and the audience doesn't care about you. Make them care about you by providing value. And so lastly, we kind of done these like evolutions before and after now, but Porter was talking about this in terms of content, right? So social media content before is, I create one piece of content and somebody tells you to push this out. Like those exact words. Like, how many of you in the chat, you tell me if you've been in part of an organization where people create content and they're like, can we push this out on social media? And in fact, nobody was in a meeting to actually create content thinking about channel specific experiences, right? So maybe if you think about an ebook, can we push this out, right? We push this out on Facebook. Okay, we're going to do a link post on Facebook. I'm going to do a link post on Instagram with a picture. I'm going to do all these ways to just get people to my traffic to my website. It's a very hub and spoke mentality too. Now it's like, okay, we have an ebook. What are the unique things we can do to complement that content on each channel, right? So maybe it's like, wow, you know, there's Facebook Live. Maybe I can get the author of the ebook to come in and do a Facebook Live about the things they wish they could have fit in that ebook, or the things that they've noticed from questions of the audience. Whatever it may be, what is that additional value add that, you know, it ties to that original piece of content, but it's a different and unique experience on each platform. And we've listed all the different ways of the different types of posts within each platform to give you a sense. And basically, each platform, just like people, they like certain things. And after a while, we start using lots of data and we start aggregating it by industry, and we start thinking about what types of posts give us certain results. And since we are concerned with engagement first and foremost, we look at, okay, how can we inject engagement, and what typically are the types of posts that generate the most engagement? And again, after 30 days, after 60 days, after 90 days, we do a quarterly, where every month you should be looking at stats to just really make sure, is your audience really aligned with this? Because your audience is going to be very different, to Porter's point before. But you can see Facebook, photo, second highest video, link, status. And we got this data. Every single thing we source in terms of data is down below. It's clickable. We averaged out 3 industries within here, because sometimes they don't treat education as education, which is annoying. They have higher education. I believe, depending on the type of brand, media is something that you should consider if you do create content on a regular basis. So we've averaged a couple of industries to make this, but you can do a deeper dive into the data. So in terms of channels, some channels are better at doing certain things than others. And that makes sense, right? So you will generally go on Pinterest, because Pinterest is a visual search engine. It generally isn't community oriented or social media, and you want to generate awareness. Every single social media platform, including Facebook groups, starts at that top of the funnel in terms of awareness. And it never stops there, because it always has different target audiences you want to approach. There's always new people joining. There's always different subsets that you might be targeting with different content in your content marketing strategy, right? So you're always going to be there and bubbling up in awareness. But certain types of channels are better at accomplishing goals than others. So you can see Facebook, Instagram, not Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter all in the website traffic. They can do that for days. One thing to note is that this is organic social media. This is not performance or acquisition-based paid marketing. That's very different. So in that sense, Facebook would be very good at conversion, not very good at loyalty. But know that this is for if we're going to do an organic daily presence on social media and growing that audience. So I want you to just, when you get these slides, take a look at them. There's a lot of nuance to them, but in general, certain platforms are better at accomplishing certain goals than others. And then lastly, things to consider is that channels serve different audiences. You all know this, right? I've highlighted some of the channels that typical education brands come to us. These are the channels we tend to play in most. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the channels that I would recommend in the future. Most of our brands are on Twitter, if you're B2B, and some B2C, depending on the stakeholder you're targeting. But it's good to look at the overall demographics of each channel and go, wow, is my audience there? I mean, it's a little bit cheating because the whole world is on Facebook, right? So you know you're going to have a subset there, but you need to really look at where is my audience hanging out? So we're not adding in a user behavior that's hard. Training people to add in another behavior or habit is something that you don't want to do. You want to piggyback to where they're at, make it as easy as possible, get into their news feed. So these statistics are here for you, but no, just because your audience isn't there in terms of a big stat, I want you to think about, can I gain attention of people in a way that isn't being done? Is there an opportunity to gain attention from people in an authentic way, that there's an opportunity because none of your other competitors are there potentially. So there's a saturation component to this, if that makes sense.
So as we've said, different social media platforms crave different things. They are better at different things and they serve different audiences. So your recipe of success is in the space we lovingly refer to as the magic in the middle. So different platforms serve different goals, audiences, and content types. And so the way that you find your magic in the middle, I like to use this Venn diagram where you think about your business objectives. So you look through your vision, your mission, your operational plans. If you have a theory of change and action, or you have your strategic plan, map those out. What do you want to accomplish? Then you have to do some listening to your potential audience and your audience to find out what do they actually want from you. And you do that by throwing spaghetti at the wall sometimes on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, and you look at the data, you see what do they react to, what is your audience. You do stakeholder interviews, talk to your potential followers, your audience, ask them questions, host focus groups, listen to them, do surveys. But then there's always this third bucket, and that is, what are your capabilities as a company? If you're a great big brand and have tons of money, then you can throw all sorts of money into your content creation, creating videos and things like that. But you may not have a huge budget, or capacity. So overlaying that company capabilities with your business objectives and what your audience is looking for is where I believe you will find the channels that you should be on. This varies for everyone. Finding that magic in the middle will help you with this activity. Different platforms serve different goals, audiences, and content types. I'm going to repeat that on the very next slide, y'all. Different platforms serve different goals, audiences, and content types. When you guys get this, we have mapped out an example worksheet that you can use to help you determine what channel is best for you, because different platforms serve different goals, audiences, and content types. But to reach everyone, and this is why we want you to use that to choose where you need to be, because you don't need to be everywhere. To reach everyone, you don't need to be on every thing.
And please don't jump on social media platforms because they're cool and hot. You always need to have real alignment with your goals, have that magic in the middle, but be committed to being there and showing up every day and having the resources to do so. So really quickly, we want to just, I know this is a little bit of social media 101, but if you know this, you are leaps and bounds ahead of most people, even though it sounds like common sense, right? So social media is about blank. Let's throw it up in the chat. And it takes a lot of work. It's not sexy. We do it every day. It includes an entire department of people, potentially.
Yes, go Mike.
Here we go. Here we go. Yes, relationships. Yes, yes.
Go Linda.
When you think about benefits, I want you to think about all of the things we talked about in the marketing funnel and start listening to a couple of them in the chat too. Like, what are the benefits that, like, if I were going to prioritize organic social media over paid, what can I expect? And I get that question a lot, you know, when should I jump into social media organically versus paid? Really, you should be jumping in organically as soon as possible because it takes forever to build up your presence, right? To do it in an authentic way. So when you are ready to go bonkers and have new products and all these cool resources, you can reach people. And then lastly, different channels serve different blank, blank, and blank. And I even went through some of the evolution of the thinking. And if you walk away with nothing, I want you to walk away with the evolution of content in particular, and the purpose of social media. I would say a majority of people are still stuck in the hub and spoke mentality of this is here to drive traffic. Let me push some content out. We never want to do that.
And I'll give you the answer for number 3. It is that sentence I kept repeating, and that is different channels serve different goals, audiences, and content types. If you don't create video, you don't belong on TikTok, right? If you, if depending on your audience, you'll choose a different place. So you choose your audience based on hopefully that magic in the middle, y'all.
We don't have a ton of time. So Sophie, maybe if there's ways you want to use the last bit of information. There was a question around like, where do educators hang out in particular? Because we gave overall demographics, which I think are important. We certainly can talk to you about where educators are hanging out more. It really depends on the type of educator. If you were trying to reach teachers, the generic in the classroom K through 12 educator teacher, Pinterest is actually a great way. Those are educators that are looking for resources. Generally, they're not looking to have relationships. They're looking for lesson plans. They're looking for complementary resources, plug and play curriculum, those kind of things. So there should be more brands on Pinterest. Pinterest drives traffic like crazy. It drives purchases like crazy. It takes a long time to build up. There are a lot of educators on Twitter. In particular, there's 10 million educator chats. And if you follow us on Twitter, we just created a series around hashtags and what educator hashtags to follow and what educator chats. There are a ton of options for educators on Twitter. Less, we wouldn't use Twitter as a way to directly reach parents, for example. I hope that helps. I mean, we have decades of experience around it and we can talk about that question ad nauseum. So just think about your audience, think about where they are, where the demographics are to begin with, and then what are you seeing in all the noise in terms of your people? Where are your people specifically hanging out?
All right, so we've hit time. Thank you so much, Alana and Porter. This was a fantastic, engaged, interactive event. I know our attendees got a lot out of it. Thank you for everyone for joining us. And, we'll be, as Porter said, we'll be sending this recording. So don't think that you've missed out. We'll also be sending some more resources. And if you have any questions, I know there were some that were unanswered, especially specific, feel free to, reach out. You can reach out to me at Sophie. I'm going to put it in here. And ask your question and we'll see about getting some answers, or reach out to Leone Consulting Group on Twitter and ask the question. All right, thank you everyone so much for joining us.
Thank you all. Really nice to hang.
Yeah, we'll see you at our next event in August. Bye.